Hello there. How's it going? Yeah. uh, Life is interesting. It's fascinating, and so much of it for so long didn't make any sense. And I've gotten to this place where life makes perfect sense. And it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's, perfect all the time in terms of how I feel about it. I have so many different emotions and feelings and experiences, but I've crafted and created and synced up with a way where everything makes perfect sense. And to me, like, this should be the first thing that is taught in the world. This should be the first thing that people explore and go after, because once you see how the world makes sense, then from that place you can do anything that you want to do. You can literally do anything that you want to do. Now, of course, we grow up in this world and watch movies, and parents are like, you can be anything you want to be. Heck, you could even be the president if you want to be. And, there's all these slangs and sayings and cards and bumper stickers and stuff. And that's not what I'm talking about. Although I find that a lot of that simple wisdom is often true, but it's like shrouded on top of a lot of stuff. So what I wanted to do today was just talk a little bit about that experience from my own experience, and recognizing that literally anything that you want to create, anything that you want to do is absolutely possible, because when you realize who you are, where you came from, and what it means to be human, what it means to be alive in this world, and you can make sense of it, well, then you can harness that and you can actually create and sync up to the world in a very magical, special way. So when I say do anything you want to do, I'm not talking about like a lot of the egoic things, right? Of like, oh, I want to make $1 million and have a successful company, or I want to become a movie star and win a Academy Award or whatever. Now, you could do those things, but you'll probably come to see that if you have those desires, they don't necessarily come from you. And that is a huge piece of this. So just to back it up a little bit, in life, we take on all the ideas, beliefs, feelings, thoughts, fears from everything around us, right? We're a kid, maybe we're, baby, you come into the world innocent, and then you start taking on all this stuff. And at some point you become aware and realize that you're this person that has a name, that has ideas, that has feelings, that has, certain beliefs, certain hobbies, and all these things. And it's like, whoa, okay, this is who I am. But at some point, if you're like me, something shifts. There's lots of animals out. Something shifts in your life, and you start to realize that, wait a second, all that stuff that I believe myself to be isn't true. And from that place, things start to shift. So let me explain. Now, I've been writing my 5th book of the Conversations with Your Best Friend series, and I'm very excited about it. And if you haven't read the other books, you can click the link below. I give them all away for free. Just click on an interest and kind of go on a journey from there. But this 5th book's been interesting because I had everything makes sense to me, but how I explain it, how I express it, I'm always trying to refine and figure out different ways to share a message which is beyond words. And that's why it's tricky, because the things that we say, the things that we write, inherently there's always contradiction in there, because we're using language which doesn't actually make sense to try to make sense of things that are far beyond language. So yes, we can use language as a way to communicate, but the issue is often that people have different understandings of different words and different meanings, and maybe they associate, maybe you say something and it triggers something in them and they start to go into a defensive state, or that what you said they take to mean something totally different. So I do the best that I can to be clear, to explain those things from a very simple and basic perspective, and at the same time I recognize that words are inherently a contradiction, and you're going to take whatever meaning you need to take and go on whatever journey. That's why I like to say, when I'm writing, like, there is no me. If you're reading a book of mine and you're saying, okay, well, this is what you believe and this is your experience, and you're kind of the passenger of the experience, the passenger of your life, if you're on the court side of your life, well, yeah, you can read it and be entertained and laugh and whatever. But the way that I like to write is to remind you that you have written the book. Everything that I'm writing is a piece of you. Whatever it makes you feel is your experience, and you can take those feelings and those ideas and thoughts and beliefs, and you can dissect them, and you can start to actually uncover all these false things that are holding you back from being in this place of knowing. And that is the process that I went on. Now, it's changed over the years in terms of how I've experienced it, but it's been the same thing on a very, very basic level, is recognizing what beliefs, fears, thoughts, and ideas that I have that aren't real, that are keeping me stuck in a character, and then the process of unraveling them, uncovering them, and reminding myself that, hey, actually that's not true. Oh, that thing you think about yourself, that's not true. And the more you do it, the more you do it, the more you do it, the more it starts to make sense. I like to compare it to fast food. I spent most of my life loving fast food. I thought it was good for me. I mean, not like in a healthy way, but I thought it was like good food. You know, I'm eating burger. I was like, yeah, this is like pleasure. This is joy. This is delicious. This is amazing. And I would go and I would get a Big Mac and I would devour it and I would be happy. And I would feel good and I'd be excited about the experience and I would share it with my friends. Now, as I got more and more into cooking and I started to connect the health issues that I was having with the food that I was eating, something started to shift. I started to say, wait a second, maybe it is the fast food. And I started listening to the people saying, yo, that stuff's not good for you, you know, it'll give you this, it'll give you that, it's high in calories, it's low quality, it's crappy oil, all these things. I started listening. But here's the thing, I didn't just stop doing it. Even though I knew it was not what I should be eating, I still craved it, I still wanted it, and I still found myself going and enjoying it. The only difference was I was starting to feel a little bit of guilt. I would eat it and be like, oh, I shouldn't have ate that. Or I'd eat it and my stomach would hurt and be like, well, there you go. I should have listened to myself. However, cool thing was, over time, it started to shift. The more I connected that feeling of not feeling good to the eating of the food and the moments of pleasure that led to hours of pain, the more I found myself less interested. To the point where over time, it just slowly faded away. I didn't try to convince myself or guilt or shame myself out of not eating this food that I love. I just allowed this inner knowing to just be there. I listened to it, and slowly, there was one day I remember I was like, wait, I actually don't crave that anymore. I gave myself enough time to think about it, like, wait, why am I going to crave this, and how am I going to feel, and is it worth it? And no. And it started to shift. And that is how I see so many things in life. You know, we can go and we can have these breakthroughs, and we can do medicine work, and all kind, you know, whatever self-help, self-development stuff, and we can have these big breakthroughs, but just because we have the big breakthrough, the aha in our brain, doesn't mean that our being, our soul, our spirit, our body has embodied that truth just yet. It's just on the path towards doing that. So don't, rather than beating yourself up about like, oh, I know this is bad for me, but I keep doing it, all I do is I bring in awareness, and it's that awareness that slowly over time it shifts. And it works the same way with yourself. You might have a certain pattern with a family member. I remember this when I was going through this whole awakening thing. My mom and I always had a really bad relationship growing up. Like, bad. You know, we kind of despised each other. Since I was a kid, she thought that I hated her. And I feel comfortable talking about this because, we have a really good relationship now. Her and my dad just came to visit. They stayed with me, and we had fun. You know, there was no frustration, no annoyance. We just had a good time. And that could have never been the reality before. But what shifted for me was I started to realize that I was playing this character and she was playing a character too, and I was being the kind of, you know, bratty kid who's like, oh, I deserve this and you need to treat me like this and you can't be like that, and she was playing the kind of victimized mom who thought their son deserved to treat him a certain way, you know, just by default or whatever it was. And I was like, wow, I can continue to play this character my whole life, or I can make the change. Because when we show up in our life fully responsible and not just saying, well, I changed and you didn't change. No, 100% responsibility for ourselves. Well, then the reality reflects the exact same thing back. Think about that for a second. How many times have you in your life, maybe you haven't, maybe you're a miracle child, I don't know, but how many times in your life have you blamed someone else and were so sure that it was about them and that you were doing nothing wrong? Think about it. Now that lens is through a lens that disempowers us. It creates a state of victimhood. And maybe that works for you, but chances are if you're watching my videos, it probably doesn't. So let me remind you that you are here and you have the opportunity to see, continue to dissect, and to look at the falseness within you and to say, hey, that's not even me. Because here's the cool part, is people can say, oh, I really don't like that about myself and I want to change. But here's the thing, it's in the languaging. I don't like that about myself. So you don't realize, but the words that you're creating, and I say you, but I mean whoever, right? I'm just using the word you. You don't realize that when somebody says, I don't like myself, there's a connection to that. There's a person that they don't realize that they're playing, and they make it about themselves, as though that thing that they don't like is actually them. So it's like when somebody has a tremendous amount of self-doubt and they're like, oh, I've just been doubting myself. I need to just be inspired, encouraged, and start loving myself and look in the mirror and remind myself how great I am. Well, you're just reinforcing the false self. And here's the thing that's doubting isn't you. The thing that's doubting is the false self. When you say, I doubt myself, well, who is yourself? Who is this self that you're talking about? So when you realize that self that's doubting isn't real, well, that is the beauty. Because then something happens where it's suddenly a shift of, oh, I don't need to try to love the false self. I can just let the whole thing go. And through that space, through that knowing, something else comes through. And again, it doesn't all happen at once. If it take a lifetime, I don't know. But for me, there's nothing more powerful than knowing that. Because you can go out and try to achieve all your dreams and create and grow and have success and all this stuff. But to me, this is the first step. Once you've done this, then you can do anything that you want because you're doing it from a place of knowing. But if you're trying to outwardly grab and do all these things so that you can feel good about yourself inward, you're just going to be piling up more and more of the character. So that is where the whole manifestation thing comes. You can look at a guru and say, oh my God, they're so peaceful in the way that they sit. They just sit like this all the time. They're very peaceful and they sing. And it's almost as if they're not even there. And they're very peaceful. They are in such a state of bliss. Right? You can do that. You can have that idea of someone. But here's the thing. All this stuff, meditation, stillness, there's skills that you can develop. Beautiful, wonderful skills. But it doesn't mean anything by default. Just because someone's able to be very peaceful and come off and walk around and do this, you don't know what they're doing the rest of their life. They can show up however they want. When we do retreats here, Aja and I have been hosting retreats at her home. And it's 1 to 4 people, and they come and they live with us. And it's like, there's no hiding. It's just us here, and that's the amazing part. I'm not showing up like, okay, I'm giving this sermon, let me show up and get into my perfect blissful state and then go off and do whatever. Like, no, we're sharing meals together. We're hanging out together, we're talking, we're walking, we're dancing, we're singing, we're doing all the things. Because I'm just here as a reminder that this is just one possible way in life. You don't need to mimic me, but you can see what's possible, and I can be a reflection to remind you of the same. And that's why I make these videos, for the same reason, to remind you that if you are here, if you're watching this, then you already know everything that you need to know. And you can create whatever life you want. Before you create the life, consider looking at those false ideas within you that are keeping you stuck, keeping you in some small, unconscious place. But that's the beautiful thing, is you're already here. If you're watching these videos, you are already awake, and you're just looking for some reminders that you're not crazy, that you're not out of your freaking mind. And that you actually have everything that you could ever need right here with you. We'll talk soon.